Come blast off in my time machine. Third eye feeling like an Visine. Blast off, blast off, blast off, blast off. Come blast off in my time machine. Third eye feeling like an Visine. Blast off, blast off, blast off, blast off. Blast off on another episode of Hero Paranormal Podcast, broadcasting from the base at La Madre Mountain, just south of Area 51. My name is Ryan, the original outlaw of the airwaves, bringing you an amazing episode tonight. Got one of my favorite guests coming on. His name is Juan. He's from the Juan on Juan podcast. You may know him. And he's got a pretty popular podcast. We've both been chatting, and we just need to do this again. We're going to get into all kinds of stuff and just unpack the conspiracy toolbox, because right now things are getting pretty weird. It's weird down here in Las Vegas as well. Other than being over 100 degrees every day, it is scorching. And I don't mean just the weather. I mean, everybody's out and about. It seems like people are finally getting out and traveling here from the rest of the country. And it's a great thing to see everybody out and doing their thing. So yeah, let's keep that up. The other thing I need to keep up is promotion, I guess. If you haven't been to heroparanormal.com, check it out and smash that donate button. For the price of a barista cup of coffee a month, you will be in the inner circle and be supporting the podcast. So yeah, that's that. Anyway, without further ado, let's get to Juan, one of my favorite guests ever. Juan, my man, how you doing? And welcome to the Hero Paranormal Podcast.
Thank you for having me on. It's the first time I'm on here. You've been on my podcast like 4 times, and I've never been on yours.
Man, it's always awesome when finally I'm always down to get on your podcast, because it's like I think you were destined to be great before you even started. Like it was just kind of cool when I first talked to you, and you're always, gosh, I mean, like it's one of the best conversations I've had on other podcasts, and it's good to finally have it on my own, because you always just kind of go for it. It's like lax and, you know, just it just goes, it just flows. There's never any static, and you know your stuff. What have you been up to, my man? How are things?
I've gotten to the point in my life, and I appreciate all those comments, man. I'm not good with comments, so but I really appreciate it. I always try to be as, because you know how it is. All this stuff fascinates me. It's awesome, and I really, when I could get together with somebody who also has a passion for it and exploring the unknown and the esoteric and all this different stuff that when you go to a party and you try to talk to somebody about it, they're like, dude, what are you saying to me? You know what I mean? Like, you can really turn some people away with the topics that we talk about. But as far as what I've been up to, I've gotten to the point in my life now where I get turned on by just seeing a good lawn. You know what I mean? Like the other day I went to Lowe's and I bought some sod and a rake. Like that's the point in my life where I'm at. And I haven't really been up so much.
I feel you. Yes.
You know what I mean? Like, how does that guy, you walk around the neighborhood, how does that guy keep his lawn so green? And you know, it's actually very hard. And I'm in Florida. It's actually really hard to keep your lawn green in Florida. And there's so many different things. It can get infected, a bunch of stuff, man. But I haven't really been up to much other than family stuff. Obviously, I had a hiatus because of some things that happened in my life, and I am now obviously, you were on my show the other night, and I'm building back a few episodes so I can start releasing them again on a weekly basis. So hopefully soon we can start out with that again.
Oh, that would be awesome. And the lawn comment, you're so right. I see that, and I'm just like blown away. Like, this guy's got his stuff together. It's probably, you know, the funny story, in Utah, there was a place where I lived in Utah, and it was kind of similar to that. And it was a guy whose yard was just impeccable. And he always, you know, talk about his side of the street was cleaner than everybody's. And the guy ended up being a CIA agent, which was like so funny, but like, it's so true. It's like he had his stuff together, man. Yeah. And, you know, when you get later in life, you start like realizing like, whoa, that's impressive. You know?
Yeah, you start appreciating those little things, and yeah, I like it because it's relaxing, right? So what I'll do is I'll just put on a podcast or something, and I'll just start working on the lawn or cutting the grass or something like that. But I've wanted to step up my game these last few months as far as getting the. I neglected my lawn. I had a lawn guy. He would just cut it however, and I was just like, you know what? I'm gonna start doing dad stuff, and I know you can relate.
I totally feel you. Yeah, and it's like, I don't know. Yeah, I in Vegas, everybody pays to have everything done, and it's like this weird. If they see you out there like doing your landscaping, they look at you all like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "Man, I'm used to being on acres and acres. Like this is like a tiny little, you know what I mean?"
Yeah, because it's more barren over there. But how is it? So I know because you live over in Nevada, right? But then the Skinwalker is over in Utah. How far away are you from there? Do you always travel or what?
Man, it's a long ways. It's I usually end up taking so much gear, and I rather not check all that gear at the airport. So I usually drive like my Sprinter van, and it's 8 hours there and then 8 hours back. So that part sucks. But like you said, I'll just throw in a podcast or like some books that I need to like on Audible or that I need to read. But yeah, it's grueling. It's grueling. But up there, it's like, yeah, acreage is just, you just forsake it. You're just like used to it. So down in Nevada where it's like acreage is like expensive down here compared to Utah. But yeah, all the, back to the cool part, the paranormal stuff is, other than Area 51 down here in Nevada, the majority of the stuff I investigate is up in Utah because there's this cool area called the Uinta Basin, which is, an area that since 1776, when Dominguez and Father Escalante came through mapping for the Spanish, they just found this area to be intriguing. They saw things in the sky. They didn't like the vibe. And, ever since then, it seems like this area has been sort of an antenna or satellite dish of sorts to otherworldly or innerworldly or something in between. And most likely in between this gray area, all kinds of dimensional stuff that you're aware of. And yeah, I'm just intrigued by it.
You really had me thinking. You really had me thinking last time that you were on my show when you said about the Skinwalker, what they're willing to give up in order for whatever power or whatever it is that they have. And it came back to these elites, right? Mm-hmm. Do the elites have some similar sort of ritual to where they have to give up a certain amount of, I don't know, is it their soul? You know how it is that in all these movies that they always show all these things. It's because it's real life. Like the Bohemian Grove is an actual place. A lot of people neglect to a lot of people don't even know about the Bohemian Grove, right? About these elites that go out there and they're worshiping this owl god or Moloch or whatever you want to call it. And when you said that, I've been thinking about that like nonstop. I'm like, what did he even mean by what they have to give up? Because you have the Skinwalker, you have the Wendigo, you have all these different sort of creatures, Bigfoot or not, werewolves, whatever it is. And that's why I've always been fascinated by everything that you do out there. And the way you go about it, you're like so nonchalant about it, like, I've seen Bigfoot. I've seen him a few times. I've seen werewolves and I've seen all these things. And I'm like, dude, how do you, like, that's crazy. You know what I mean? Like, that's insane to me. But ever since you've been talking about that, I've been thinking about it, and it's got to do with these esoteric practices that the elites do in order to gain power. It's all prefabricated, I believe, in this realm. And I just got done watching Jumanji, and the original one, the 1995 one, and it just comes to show you, like, even. Or the Matrix, like this crazy movie, or it comes to like the multiverse and all these different versions of reality and where you could go, and it's like these people literally just put it out there, and by these people, I mean it in all combinations, these archonic forces, whatever it is that you want to call it, whatever you interpret it to be. But I feel like they do implant like all these little different, you know, little nuggets of truth and everything that they do. It's all symbolic. It's all got to do with like sigil magic and stuff like that, you know?
Oh, for sure. Like even the word elite, like L-ite, you know, it's like those who are the mediums who are willing to like channel forces other than themselves into opportunistic means that they see as, you know, hey, maybe this will get me some Skrilla in the afterlife. And I don't know, or whatever, the karma, whatever you want to call it, it is crazy what they're willing to give up, like you said, in the case of especially dark arts. You know, they're not even just, I mean, they're rolling up to the dealer with like, you know, all their chips, and they're saying, hey, I'll bring other chips to you later. And, you know, that's us or whoever. And the crazy thing is, you know, when you really study, though, like ritualistic magic, it's interesting because I love it. I'm intrigued by it. And, you know, the most powerful thing a sorcerer has is not rolling up to the dealer with anything, you know, just practicing. And you know, because if the sorcerer rolls up to the source, you know, giving all of himself, there's nothing left. And that's the creepy-ish part. But I think you're right. There's a lot of agents of destruction, whatever you want to call them, elites. Some are not so elite. But yeah, definitely there's a lot of symbolism, and you see it in all of our media, which scares the heck out of me having kids. You know, you don't, and I love Disney, but, you know, knowing he's a 33rd degree Mason, which I love the great work, you know, I think every man should try to work to get better. But at the same time, you know, in that work, yeah, there's a lot of practicing involved, and you get pretty good at doing what you do. And when you look at the media sponsorship and like the toys, like your kid's watching a show, and next thing you know, next week he's got the toy or she has the toy. And you're just like, oh my gosh, this is like a hypodermic needle into our minds, really, with media. I try to watch very little TV, but yeah, I hear you, man.
Yeah, it is wild how they've taken data and turned it into a commodity. And yeah, it is kind of disgusting because I always tell people, if it's free, you're the product, right? Like, oh, this is great, you know, this app that scans my face and it makes me old. This is fun, and it's just like a trend on these sites. Like, I don't even use Facebook anymore. The only social media that I use is Instagram, and I just had to get off of Facebook because it's, number one, it's too political, right? All these lizards are all in the same bed together. They're all playing you all the same exact way. They don't care, you know, this one doesn't care more about you than the last one that was there, right? It's all a show. It's all charades. Mm-hmm. And even to touch on the fact, Bill Cosby got released? Did you see that? How crazy is that? Like,
and the timing, man, the timing of it was crazy too. Like, and Bill Cosby, like, I was like, what? Yeah, it was very odd. And you didn't hear a peep.
Well, yeah, but literally a guy who was convicted of doing these disgusting things is free. But it just comes to show you, if you have enough, it's all about connections. If you have enough money and enough connections, literally you could do whatever it is that you want, right? Like the whole Bill Gates and him splitting up with his wife, but then he liquidated, I don't know how many billions of shares. You know, are they hinting at another economic collapse, or what are these people doing? Why were they testing and doing models all before the C word popped off, right? And now it's like, I think I was reading something. I was reading something online. I mean, it's got to be true if it's online, right? In the history of virology, it's like no virus has ever mutated to be that much more deadly. It's always like the mutation becomes less and less effective. But then all of a sudden you have this variant, right, that's going to just wipe everybody else. Like, they already tried it, right? They already tried it. It didn't work. Now what's next? All of a sudden, all these signs of wear your mask, They're all gone. Now it's real small on the side of the door, and it says they're optional. They're encouraged. And it's like, what are they really after? Or at the same time, I think about it, maybe it's got nothing to do with anything, and that's just the crazy world that we're living in. And I don't know, what do you think? Do you think that there is an ulterior motive to all these elites? And I know you want to talk about, what's the latest on Epstein? I haven't really been up to par. I know about the John, how do you say his last name? McAfee, right? The virus guy?
Yeah, man, let's go there. Let's go with John, because I think that is sort of like the next target, or was the next target. I mean, the guy got a tattoo. A lot of people are just like, oh, he's a crazy, he's crazy. So he killed himself. And it's like we're just so used to it. We hear that, oh, the guy was crazy, he killed himself. And that's kind of like, when you look at this from an outside perspective, what are the odds of somebody with that amount of money?
They're not even hiding it anymore, dude.
Right? Yeah.
They're not. It's just like Robin Williams, too, right? I was just watching Jumanji. It's like this successful guy made all these movies, had what you would think has a lot of money, right? And then they just kill themselves?
And What Dreams May Come was his last movie, which was exactly what you're talking about this Matrix and being able to this I don't know if I don't want to ruin the movie or be the spoiler, but yeah, basically this guy, ends up in a coat colored with paint from all the Matrix and, finding his wife.
What's the name of it? I actually have not seen that movie. I'm going to write it down right now.
Dude, epic. What Dreams May Come.
I'm gonna actually put that on the docket. So, yeah, as far as the whole, they don't even hide it anymore, because that's how. And I've talked to, I do my podcast Strange Ones with my buddy Tom Thompson, my Canadian brother from another mother.
He's awesome.
He's real big on this. That the reptilians, right? These lizard people, if that's what they are, whatever. They're not that creative. They're not that creative, and that's why a lot of throughout all of ancient history, as you may know, we have different interpretations of the same figures over and over again. Krishna, Buddha, Jesus Christ, Quetzalcoatl. You have the same figure, just named different things all throughout all of history. Does it have to do with the Anunnaki? I don't know. Was it actually one guy? Was it one entity? Whatever, entities? I don't know. But the point is that they're not that creative, right? So, yeah, let's whack this guy. And literally he had whacked tattooed on him. But I'm into cryptocurrency, and whacked was actually a coin that he had made or something like that. Some coin, some cryptocurrency that he had made, whacked. And it just so happened to be that when he did die, that coin blew up. So if you would have been holding X amount of coin, you would have made a bunch of money, right? So again, how much did he really know? Because what the whole thing that gets me is, as far and with everything, right? With aliens, if they're so advanced, and I want to get your take on this. If they're so advanced and they're so highly intelligent, and they're so, they have all this technology, what do they want with us? And why don't they just stop everything? Why don't they just kill everybody or take over the planet or whatever it is that they want to do? You know what I mean? What's the point? If they're that, what do they need from us? Obviously, you have the other aspect of they mine our energies and all that. But what's your take on that? If they're so, you have these entities and these aliens that are so highly advanced, what would they have to do with us? What do they want from us?
They're horrified, I think, because I believe that the majority, like you said, these intelligent agents of destruction that mostly govern the masses, I believe that our enemies are most likely created, the ones that we perceive. And I think that our innate human trickster nature may be what eventually saves us from these quote unquote entities, because we dance the dance better than they can. And whatever you want to call it, that intermediary. It's so difficult to explain, but basically, it's much like The Matrix, or much like a lot of these movies where, oh, what you believe you can achieve. What the fuck? I mean, sorry, I don't swear on but what? Come on. There it is. There it is. It's like The Secret. I'm just going to vomit it on you. What you believe you can achieve. If you believe you're great, you are great. And it's very interesting that the masses are, mesmerized by confetti, money, and the chances of us getting any real chunks of it are unlikely. And it's just that. It's a confetti show. And instead of looking at the machines that are multiplying it, keeping it, and earning it, we're looking at where it's getting burned at or where it's coming out. You look at a rap video, it's like buy a big screen TV, a Bentley, and get a big booty girlfriend, and you're set. It's like, no, that's not the real American dream. That's like hood rich.
I think I was listening to Shaquille O'Neal. He said it's not about how much you can earn, it's about how much you can keep. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, right? What is the point of getting all these things, right? Like, again, Robin Williams, all these guys, they had everything, they had all the money, but at the end of the day, they're sad and lonely, and they end up killing themselves, right? I mean, if that's the narrative that you want to believe. But I don't know. And another thing that you mentioned last time we were talking was about the arrangement of certain towers or stones in certain ways to be able to tap into other realms. And obviously the Egyptians I love the Egyptians. And it just so happens to be that always, whenever there's this advanced civilization, they could never really give you a straight answer of where they went. Like, where did the Egyptians go? Oh, well, the Hyksos people dominated them, right? They took over. Well, who are the Hyksos? Huh? They were just people. They were just a nomadic tribe just rolling around. Wait, so you mean to tell me that one of the greatest civilizations of all time got taken over by some nomadic group out of nowhere? And then when you look into them, they're just people. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's that type of stuff that it's like they put it out in your face, and they're like, you know what? You're never going to know because you don't matter. And it's like, when you start talking to people about this sort of stuff, it's like, why does it matter? And that's the first mistake. It's like, you should care about this stuff. You should want to know. And I think on the last episode we're talking about the law of attraction and speaking and spelling. You're casting spells with your words, and your words have power. And the English language has been, for lack of a better term, dumbed down. And they've added letters to our alphabet. The original alphabet only had 17 letters. And they've added all these letters and vowels that never even existed. Why? In order to put a damper on our power. That's what the Gnostics always talked about. That's what a lot of people, the Satanists, right? They always talk about the you're a god and the power within. I feel that they were inspired by the Gnostics and these earlier groups who were taught, again, we all have this divine spark from above, whatever it is, and you're able to tap into that. But guess what? It's a brokered experience. And these elites don't want you to know this. So you have to talk to, like the Pope, right? The Pope talks to God every day. The guy under him talks to God every other day. The guy under him, twice a week, whatever it is. And you have to go to them to be able to achieve divinity. Why? Cut them out. And perhaps this is why those people were ruled heretics. Because at the end of the day, they knew something that they didn't need to know. Maybe John McAfee knew something he was going to spill out. I don't know, right? But again, I always wonder, if these people knew so much, how did they last so long? Why did they even last as long as they did? You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's a double-edged sword. It seems like, especially, they seem impenetrable, yet, at the end of the day, they're always assimilated into you don't really know what happens. And I'm glad I think you brought up the 17-letter alphabet, man. When we can you imagine the power of that? Like, whoa. And, that's how much things have been dumbed down. And I'm glad you brought up the God thing, because a lot of people think of the God and that's it. They just take it as gospel, no pun intended, but they don't look at the word and what it means. And you look at the word in the Bible itself and it says Elohim, it's like, there's a crew.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it was, there's plural. I think in Genesis, he talks about God. It was like gods, plural. And it's like, wait a minute. I thought there was only one, right? But then there's so many denominations of Christianity and Catholicism and all these different religions. They can't even agree upon themselves what's the correct way to worship or whatever. That's why I was raised Pentecostal Christian, right? The strictest of the strict, right? The girls couldn't wear a certain length. They couldn't have their hair long or something. Crazy stuff, just crazy stuff. And it's like, even recently I had somebody tell me, because when I started diving into this whole, trying to find the answers to, conspiracy theories and stuff like that, the first thing that really got me into was the whole Saturn time cube stuff, right? The black cubes all over the place. Like, what do they mean? What do they stand for? Why is there different? You have the cube at Mecca, the 9/11 memorial. There's a big cube. In the movies, the Transformers, the Matrix, Hellraiser. There's all these cubes. It's like, what does that stand for? And I started going down the line and started diving down these wormholes, which I know how it can be, going down all these wormholes. And I started looking into things, and then I came across the Gnostics and their beliefs, and then these alternative scriptures. And when I started questioning about that, somebody told me, I was like, why in the Old Testament? Why is it like an angry God and, I am a jealous God and there's nobody like me, da-da-da. He's killing everybody, child sacrifice, da-da-da, all this stuff. And then in the New Testament, it's like, hey, it's a different God. And you know what they told me? Said, don't read the Old Testament. I said, but it's the Bible. No, yeah, just go ahead and ignore that. And I was like, but wait, hey, the Gospel of Judas, Judas is the good guy.
Right.
And the disciples, Jesus is talking crap about the disciples, and he confided in Judas. What does that got to do? No, don't read any of that stuff. It's like, wait a minute. So that's why it's called his story. It's the victor, the spoilers, right? So at the end of the day, we're only listening and reading what the winners, the conquerors, the people who took over, their story. King James Version. Who was the one in charge of putting together that version? Well, King James. So, you know what I mean? What can you believe and what can you not believe? And that's why I believe in the law of attraction. I believe in all that stuff. And I just keep an open mind, and I reserve the right to change my mind at all times. Because at the end of the day, dude, it's like the stock market. You don't know if it's going to go up or down, but it's going to do something. Right? It's going to go up or it's going to go down, but you can't predict that. And you just got to take it with a grain of salt and just ride the wave. So I wouldn't call myself an atheist by any means, because I do believe that there is some higher power. I do believe that there are, programmers, whatever it is, like you said, the Elohim, the Nephilim. Who are all these people? And even in Gnostic cosmology, like, it's so interesting, that story, right? Mm-hmm. They flip everything on its head. It's like, no, you're living in a fractal reality created by some dark overlord, which he made a copy of a higher realm, the upper and lower eons. And you tell people that story, and they just lose it. Like, no, there's no way. Hey, dude, I mean, they're scriptures, just how there's scriptures of the Bible, there's scriptures of this stuff, right?
That's
it. It's true or no?
You nailed it, man, because I think you nailed it. In fact, I was like blown away recently. Again, speaking of the media, about how they have mirrored, like what you just said. Have you seen the Loki? I think it's by Disney. Go figure. But they have Loki, you know, the bad guy from the Avengers, and he's like going through this fractal reality and figuring out that anyway.
I haven't watched it, but I
dude,
thought there was a show.
They go so deep into esoterica that it's like, are you kidding me? Thanks, Disney. And that's exactly it. I mean, you look at the Bible, the last thing you want to show a preacher, a priest, anybody is exactly what the skull and bones have, you know, as their number, the 322, Genesis 322. Show them that. And, you know, it's like basically says, you know, the Elohim say, oh my hell, these humans have figured out how to be gods. And, yeah, that's it. That's pretty much Genesis 3:22. And so it's really difficult because it's, you know, it's the new American Bible. Like you said, nobody ever wants to quote anything King James because, you know, all of a sudden God has, quote unquote, God has rough edges and he's a bad guy. And you know what? The bad guy is so much easier to figure out than the good guy. I think that that's the intelligent move. And I'm glad that you brought up the black cube, because it sort of represents, you know, artificial intelligence, the machine, how things work, and the Kabbalah, and figuring out how all of these pieces go together, because we don't make a decision yet. We have time for that, you know, like it's like in the afterlife, we may need to know how this works because we don't know who we're dealing with or what we're dealing with. And it might not just be here. And that's the interesting take I get on a lot of the Kabbalistic and symbolistic stuff. I mean, it's crazy when you think about like how dumbed down our society is. People used to like live in tribes or clans, and they had these shields that literally showed what their family stood for. And oh my gosh, I mean, they had like basically a Facebook page on a shield, and they would hold it up, you know, and, you know, decide, you know, it was crazy. Now everything is so dumbed down that we pretend to be things we're not to impress people that don't matter with, you know, resources that do matter and we should be using for other things.
Yeah. And, you know, you talk about the Kabbalah, it's like these, again, these mystical words, right? The language of God and Enochian literature as well too, right? Like you have these people who supposedly could talk to angels and they were getting transmitted all these things, right? It's so crazy. But with Kabbalah, it's like I was listening to, I don't know what he was, but he was talking about it, and they were interviewing him, and they were saying how even if you could read these scriptures and you had to prepare yourself for I don't know how many years to read these scriptures, and even if you could read them before you were quote unquote ready, right, like almost like an initiation, some weird type of thing, you wouldn't understand it, right? You wouldn't understand it. And then he was talking, and then back then these people who practice these rituals, they would go into these caves underground for a very long time, and he said they would manifest food for themselves to eat. And this is an interview, and he's like, yeah, they would make meat that they could eat, right? And he just kept going right after. I was like, wait a minute, can you go back to what you just said? You said they're conjuring meat for them to eat? What is this? Like, is this some sort of black magic or what is happening? And he just brushed by that like nothing. And then again, it comes down to the words, right? You talk about Loki in Welsh mythology. It's so mythical, right? It's all full of dragons and all this lore and all these different things, because these people, I don't know if they could tap into a certain realm. I like to think that the Egyptians were able to do some sort of some practice, right? You have these magnificent structures for what? For what purpose? Well, maybe at a certain point in the year, at a certain time of day, they could lay in that box in the king's chamber, the queen's chamber, and they could vibrate themselves to another reality. Maybe what if the Mayans or the Egyptians, all as a collective, they were all able to eventually tap into this sort of thing. I feel that maybe we're getting there, and it's a different version. It's like we're playing Civilization, and you just the time just keep going on and on. And like you said, the black cube is AI, right? You have like the people at Kindred AI, where they have these quantum computers that they have to keep the processors at crazy, it is like below zero, some crazy temperature, and it's processing information so quickly, it sounds like a heartbeat. Boom, 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 boom. And the guy working on it, I forget his name, he says, it's like I'm at an altar to an alien god. Or like the guys at CERN. What are they doing? The God particle. What does that have to do with anything? But again, if you have enough money, enough resources, enough time, you could, again, the magician, his stage just gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and now they're able to portray it through the media, portray it through entertainment, portray it to younger audiences, right? To indoctrinate them earlier so that they could do, I don't know what. You know what I mean? Like, and I don't watch a lot of TV either, but you see it. And it's like I was on Hulu the other night, and there was this Discovery Channel show on the Knights Templar. And I looked over at my wife and I said, you know what they were accused of, right? She's like, what? And I was like, they were worshiping Baphomet. They were worshiping some entity. They were practicing these rituals, this old Egyptian ritual where they would, if you had the head of a prophet, it would prophesize to you. And that's how they made the modern day banking system. They were the first ones, if you deposit here, you can take it out over there. They were the first ones. And that's history. And these people are all the Knights Templar, yeah. But they don't go into the dark side of it, right? They're probably having sexual relations with each other and doing all these crazy things, which again can come into today's society, right? And the Catholic Church with little boys and things like that, et cetera, et cetera. You know where that goes. But it's a dark, dark rabbit hole, man. And I don't know. I don't know, dude. Maybe that's why the aliens don't want to come and talk to us, because we're doing all this weird esoteric stuff.
Watch out for that left-hand path. Yeah, man. The lie or the truth is too big to fail, like you mentioned. The yin or the yang, the right or the left-hand path. And I'm glad you brought up the Templars, because, yeah, they did everything you said, but yet they also did the impossible, which was just a few guys in the middle of the desert. You know, like, it was insane. What they did was literally like probably one of the most high scale, esoteric, high desert, occult rituals, where they just took complete control, not only of the souls, the money, and anybody that came into contact with them, but they benefited from all of it. And, you know, I mean, these guys, they had oaths where literally, I think if they were outnumbered by, let me make sure I know. It's been a while since I've read this. They had to be outnumbered more than 3-1, which that number is so key, right? So key to Loki. And, you know, they had to be outnumbered 3-1 for them to retreat. And if they weren't, they always won. It was like the most insane mathematics. And like you said, Venmo, PayPal, they're all a joke compared to what these guys were doing, because they were doing it without any technology or batteries or anything.
That's interesting. That's interesting. How a lot of people, they think that 13 is an unlucky number, but apparently it's one of the most sacred numbers, right? You have Jesus and the 12 disciples, 13, right? And it goes on and on and on. But I feel like a lot of it has to do with sacred geometry, and even the Egyptians were into that. And a lot of these different, if you look at I think it was I saw this meme where it was this Aztec pendant, and then you know how they do all these crazy lines on it. You look at that, and then you looked at a cross section of a DNA, and it was like almost similar. It's like, how do these people know about all this? Like, how did they know? if again they lacked the technology. But it goes back to being able to tap into the Akashic records, perhaps this realm that everything that has ever existed is just there. The Nomos, right? Mm-hmm. In Africa, this tribe that they would come down and they're like, oh, who gave you your information? It's like, well, the Nomos. Well, who are they? Oh, they come from that star system up there. Was it an actual physical being? Was it some sort of outer body experience that they were having? Right. A lot of these people back then would use psychedelics. Or psychedelics around to the other world? Are you able to pierce the fabric of reality by DMT or psilocybin or whatever it is? You know what I mean? It's like, but then again, why are those things outlawed as well? Is it? It's like how I think it was Terrence McKenna said it wasn't because they care about you; it's because they don't want you to know the truth. Pretty much, paraphrasing that quote.
Exactly.
But I don't know, man. It's pretty crazy. Well, what are your thoughts on the whole post-disclosure? What do you feel is coming? Do you think that they are going to come out? Because I think they wrapped up that report. I think it was last week, where they pretty much admitted that they don't, supposedly, according to them, that they don't know what these UFOs and this otherworldly technology, what it is. Do you believe them as far from what you've seen? Because I know you've seen some stuff, and I think you've seen a lot of stuff.
I think they said the right thing for the masses. They said what they had to say, and it was the correct thing from a government perspective. I was actually impressed. They basically, are they lying? Absolutely. And for good reason, in my opinion. I think somebody quoted, was it Greer? It might have been Stephen Greer. He said, there was 3 lies. 1, we don't have this technology. 2, we don't know what these are. And the third one was even better, but I can't remember it. But basically, it was, the whole, nothing burger of this official report. I'm sure that the ones that the senator and congressman got was a lot better and meatier, but we didn't get that. And what we got was pretty good, but it basically said these things are cool. They're not ours. We don't know what they are. And I think that's the right thing to say, even though they know more than I'm sure they're letting on. But, these systems of, like you mentioned, since ancient times, whatever you want to call these governing systems, Kabbalists, Gnostics, Brotherhoods, they've all studied the secret arts. And it's quite probable that, the persecutions to which a lot of people have been subjected to are because whatever these governing bodies are, the best thing they can do is have plausible deniability. And it's, whether they're trying somebody who is a traitor, such as George Washington, or, it's a game, like you said, it's his story. It's the one that wins, and you follow the money, and be careful of the things that you don't think exist. Because in my opinion, that's kind of what we're dealing with. There's a lot of people that don't think these things exist. And, what's the greatest trick the devil ever pulled,
Well, what did the Gnostics say? We're living in a false reality, right? And we have to, through gnosis, through knowledge, break through the matrix pretty much. And what does Neo do in the matrix, right? Mm-hmm. So, from your perspective, Ryan, when it comes to, and I know we've been talking about the Elohim and the Nephilim and all these different archonic forces or whatever. When it comes to Bigfoot, because I always come back to Bigfoot when I'm always talking to you, because I know you've seen them. When it comes to these forces, entities, whatever, are they flesh and blood? Are they energies? Are they, what are they? Or do they, when they show themselves to us, do they show themselves in ways that we're able to comprehend what they are to a certain extent? because ever since I've been talking to you about all these different things, I can't come to terms with, is Bigfoot some interdimensional creature? Is he energy? Is he an alien? Is he like what is it? And I don't know if you're able to answer that, but what do you think it is? Do you think it is some sort of spiritual energy, some sort of electrical crap? I don't know. What do you, at the end of the day, what do you believe those to be? Are they actual little green men or not?
I think we're dealing with elemental forces of nature that are more real the closer in proximity we place ourselves to the prism of the reality. So when these things edge in on the fringe of what we consider real, which is usually where we consider ourselves to be safe. And, I don't mean that just, well, yeah, you have to put yourself out in the woods. I don't mean that just in a city versus woods perspective. But you also, if you ever encountered something like this, it becomes readily apparent that they are able to do things that are not on our game board. We don't have the tools or the elements that these particular intelligences have in as how to enter and exit as they wish. And maybe it's just our perception, but still, like you said, are they real? Are they not? It depends how close you get to that edge, that prism of their entirety. So, these things are usually and typically, they're going in a direction. You have a pretty good idea of where you fit into that spectrum. And there have been cases of people that just get too close to the edge, too in their way or whatever, that it becomes a lot more real experience. And it's a fray, I guess, because, it's like these rabbit holes. If you keep following them, they end up places. And when you're in the situation out in the woods, or I know you had a recent kind of an experience, I won't go into it, but yeah, you didn't pull on that and, hang from the sweater and see where that went. And you pull on those strings long enough and you can unravel the sweater. But I think we all kind of know something is out there. Whatever that is for each individual can be different along, it's perception. A lot of this is perception, and perception is manageable. We're in control. So it's such a tough thing to explain.
Yeah, well, with my thing, I don't know if I tend to ignore these synchronicities and all these different things, but like I said, I was in the middle of the woods, the Rocky Mountains, right? No cell reception, just me and my guide that's seen Bigfoot 5 times. And again, when I left there, it was like I was energetically charged. I don't know, dude. It was weird, and I had some weird synchronicities happen to me. And it always, and I had another trip to Georgia where it was, again, the same thing. I was in a river, right, for a lot of the time I was there. And then, like, these things throughout the day would click when I would go hang out with the family in the afternoon. I was like, but I would kind of brush them off, right? Like, it would be a lot with numbers, and like they would line up, and I'd be like, nah, you know what I mean? Like, that has nothing to do with it. But like I said, when I told you about you're talking about perception and different levels of consciousness, pretty much is what it is. When my father had his heart attack and he died he flatlined 4 times. The first thing I asked him when I was finally able to talk to him was, so, right? He's like, what are you talking about? I go, so, well, what's all this about? He was like, well, what do you mean? I go, so is there another side? Did you see the light? Did you see your ancestors? Did you see something else? He said, no, I didn't see anything. It was just dark. And I go, holy crap. The guy who died 4 times, and he didn't see anything on the other side. But again, my father's not the type of guy to be talking about these different higher consciousness and questioning all these different things. He just lives his life, businessman, works, right? He's been working all his life. You know, it's like and a lot of people can relate. They don't care about this stuff, right? They don't care to question it. They don't care about what's something. They just live their life, and they just want to be calm and just do regular people stuff. And then you have guys like me and you who want to push the limits. Obviously, you've pushed the limits a lot further than I have.
Oh, I don't know.
I'll be honest with you, Ryan. I'd be scared to go out to Skinwalker Ranch, and you paint a different. So what? All these TV shows, and I talked to you about it last time. The Skinwalker show, the new owners, the way that they like paint these things to be, it's like it's an actual werewolf, it's an actual alien. But then when I speak to you about this sort of stuff, you paint a different picture for me. Like, hey, this is more than just, you know, a Bigfoot or a werewolf. This will take your soul. This will take a piece of you. This will, you know, what are you willing to give up in order to be able to peek through the curtain and look to the other side? Are you willing? And that sounds scary. That's scary, man. To know that in order to be able to experience something, you need to give up a piece of yourself. I don't know. It's scary stuff, man.
And yeah, it is. I think it's true. Being you have to kind of huck a chunk of yourself, being the observer. You have to be so invested, at least in the moment, to want to or to see something. And, you know, I'm glad you brought up your fishing / Bigfoot trip, because it's a lot like fishing. And, but it's an invisible line and leader. So when you have a hit, you have a hit. You know, you got a hit. You can let that fish go. You can bring him all the way to the bank, but you know, sometimes you just don't know exactly what you're hooked into. And the interesting thing is that these entities do seem to at least require your attention, which is a pretty impressive feat that they can. I don't know if we are sending a piece of ourselves as an observer to a fractal reality that these interdimensionary entities are able to exist in, and then they reflect back to the best of their ability, whatever they are or are not. And you know, we see this. It's a hell of a display no matter what, you know. And I think that, yeah, you got to be there. You know, for me, that's 8 hours there, 8 hours back. Usually in conditions I'm not very comfortable in. But yet I'm interacting with something that is probably also very uncomfortable. So I don't know. I think the whole area in Utah, and I think there's places like this throughout the entire planet. And there's, you know, we know through other practices, whether you want to be like super straight line and follow CIA etiquette and look at the men who stare at goats and only remote viewing counts, or if you want to look into other areas that are more occult or you know, not regarded with as much intensity, but there are various tentacles to the reality that seems to exist just beyond that fray where most people are willing to go.
Yeah. And do you go by yourself, Ryan, when you go to these places, or do you have a team that goes with you? How does that work?
I've gone by myself more times than I probably should have. I'm getting smarter in my old age, but yeah, I've gone a lot by myself. It's better to be with people because there's a camaraderie there and some safety. But then again, you know, it's entirely up to the person, and you know, it's one of those things. It's like you have a swimming pool and it's cold on one end and warm on the other. You don't have to dive into the deep end. Like you know, and that's the issue. I think there are people who dive into the deep end, and that's that. But this is a tug of war, a game of sorts. And, you know, we're dealing with a lot of these entities. The only way that they can interact is in a trickster mentality, which is very fractal, very reflective of oneself, and trying to hook, much like a fisherman would try to hook a fish. You know, just think about that act, what we do when we fish, and just pretend we're the fish. So It's deep, man. Even if you're in shallow water, it's deep, deep, deep talk.
Yeah, I've actually manifested fish before. I've manifested the biggest fish I've ever caught, and I caught it all on camera, dude. It was the wildest thing. But it's like how you said, the set and intent, right? And I had been talking about it from the day before, and I had been thinking about it from the day before. And again, I caught all this on camera, the entire video, from the beginning of the day to when the moment that I caught that fish. That's all I was talking about. And then what happened? Boom. Landed into the biggest fish until today that I've caught.
Wow.
About 2 years ago. But I manifested that fish. It was the wildest thing. And, you're talking about fishing and being in remote areas. I have a buddy of mine that I go bow hunting with for hog here in Florida. And
whoa.
I don't like going out with him because we're in these areas that, again, it's just swamp. The only light you have is either the infrared that we're using, or the night vision that we're using, or the moonlight. And knowing me, the way I am, and all the things that I'm into, I don't like going to these places because, again, what could manifest itself when I'm in that tree stand, right, waiting for that next animal to come through, or whatever it is. And it just so happened to be that one of the areas that we went to one time, it's just me and him in a tree stand, pitch black in the middle of some Florida swamp, and we start talking about aliens and all this stuff. And then he goes, "Hey, dude, you know that about like 5 miles from here off of I-95, there was a Bigfoot sighting." And I'm like, dude, this is not the time to be talking about this stuff, because all I'm thinking about is as soon as I switch that night vision on, I got something at the other end by the feeder or whatever staring right back at me. It's like, what am I going to do then, right? And it just so happened to be that 5 miles from where we were at, there was a sighting of some sort of bipedal creature. And I don't know, it was pretty scary. It was pretty scary to be out there at that time of night in the middle of nowhere, and it made me feel a little bit uncomfortable.
Man, bow hunting for hogs sounds super crazy and cool, though. But yeah, that is super scary, and that's exactly the moments when those things happen. So you nailed it. I don't know. It's one of those things that, obviously it's like the crazy person that lives on the outskirts of town. They're more likely to see Bigfoot than the one that's like living in the tower in the middle of town. So it's such a tough, yin and yang type thing.
Yeah. And I had asked him one time, I was like, "Hey dude, what's the scariest thing that you've seen?" Right? Because he's got all these game cameras set up and these remote areas. And in that same area that we were hunting, he was like, "Yeah, I had a picture or pictures of this bearded man without a shirt on, no shoes, and a rifle in one hand. He just walks in front of the camera, gives it a thumbs up, and then he's out of frame."
Whoa.
And I was like, I think that's who we should be scared of out here. Not Bigfoot. We should be scared of whoever that guy is who is out here barefoot in the middle of this swamp with a freaking rifle in his hand.
I'm glad you bring up barefoot, because that's kind of the stuff you encounter. Those are the things, those little things when you see human barefoot footprints in the snow in the middle of the winter, or human barefoot. I mean, it's kind of like Scooby-Doo, right? Like the humans are always the biggest tricksters of all. And it's like, what in the heck is this? But, yeah, there's so many more. Oh, man, we got more places to go with this, and I can't believe we just scratched the surface, because we've been talking an hour and it feels like a second. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's what I always like about being on your show, Ryan. I always have a great time, and again, I'm telling you, I want to go out to Utah. If it's the fly fish, if it's the hunt for skinwalker, whatever it is, but I'm sure we'll figure it out soon, and hopefully I can get out there one of these days.
For sure, man. I can't thank you enough for coming on. And like you said, it's always seamless and perfect and great conversation. Where can listeners tune into the Juan on Juan podcast, and what else do you have going on right now?
So you can find me on Instagram at the Juan podcast. I have about 47 episodes, 46 episodes that I've recorded. And I took a little break at the beginning of this year. I thought 2020 was going to be wild, but 2021 has been wilder. And you can find my podcast anywhere you can listen to podcasts. I'm on YouTube. And like I said, I'm in the works of building up another set of episodes to go ahead and start releasing, one of which you're going to be on. And I'm just lining up interesting guests to talk about this sort of stuff. If you like the esoteric stuff, if you like Bigfoot, I talk about anything on my podcast about fatherhood, not just conspiracy theories. I dive into all realms of life, and yeah, you can catch me anywhere you can listen to podcasts, the Juan on Juan podcast. I also do another podcast with my Canadian friend. It's a little bit more crude. We have a lot of dark humor, and that's Strange Ones, and that's Tom from the Strange Brew podcast, and we do a bi-weekly show on there where we dive into cryptids, we do true crime, we do rant episodes, we do all types of stuff, but again, it's not suitable for work, or not safe for work, so just a heads up on that, because we do have a lot of dark humor, and it's one of those shows where I just really let loose and just have a good time with it, and hey, people seem to enjoy it.
They're great shows, and everybody should listen in on them. Yeah, I can't thank you enough, man. And until next time, keep doing what you're doing, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you for having me again, Ryan. I appreciate it.
All right, we'll talk soon.
Later.
Well, there you have it, man. He is the man, Juan Ayala. Like, I'm telling you, this is like, he is going to be one of the best ever. So, or is. So already, keep an eye out for both the Juan on Juan podcast as well as his other podcast, Strange Juans. They're both worth listening to. Tom from Strange Brew is awesome. And until next time, keep your eyes to the skies, feet on the ground, but don't forget to take a look around.
Come blast off in my time machine. Third eye feeling like it need Visine. Blast off, blast off, blast off, blast off. Come blast off in my time machine. Third eye feeling like it need Visine. Blast off, blast off, blast off.